Hi, everybody.
Hi, is it working?
Yes. Can you hear
Oh
me?
my God, yes, I can.
Awesome. Hey,
We're
Puja.
officially live. Look at
We
that.
are officially live.
And I think
People
our
are joining
glasses match. This is so cute.
on. So good to see you. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining. Let's maybe wait just a couple more seconds while people start coming on through. Happy Pride. Yay.
I love it.
Puja, love the frames.
Well, I'm wearing my favorite new shirt, protect trans kids, but I can't I can't get it in the frame. I keep backing up my computer because you either can only see my face or you can only see the shirt. So we'll have to spotlight it at the end.
They're both beautiful. I prefer your face at this very moment, but I'm glad that I know that the shirt is there. But yes, beautiful. Protect trans kids. Absolutely. How was Youth Pride last week?
Oh yeah, it was so awesome. First ever Cambridge at Cambridge Engine Latin to the high school, which is your because you graduated there also. But first trans pride, Erica Hart was there, whole youth panel. It was great. It was emotional too, but it was really awesome.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very cool. And youth led, right?
Yeah, it was a combination of being youth led and then also I was on a planning committee with a bunch of other GSA staff members. So it was fantastic. But the panel and the facilitator of the panel was all youth. So, and then it was just like an auditorium full of young people, trans, queer, LGBT, all of the letters people. So it was really awesome.
I love that. Could you, for the few folks that have joined us already, thank you for being here. Could you just briefly say what the acronym GSA stands for? Because I also know it stands for General Services Administration, which is like the federal government's landlord. And you know how I love talking about buildings. I always want to talk about federal architecture. But in this case, GSA stands for something different.
Yes, I love that. Now I'm like, what? No, what? Now I'm like, you're making me
Student
blank.
Alliance, right? The
Yeah,
gay
yeah, yeah. Gay
straight
straight
lines.
lines.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I
Yeah,
got
yeah.
on a
No
tangent
worries.
in my
There's
head.
a lot of letters.
I got on a tangent out on my head, like what that government building would look like. So, okay, we're
Yeah,
back on
no,
track.
I'm miss designing with you, Pooja. I'm so excited to have you here today. Maybe we can jump in if I want to respect your time. I know you have a lot going on for Pride. You will be on a panel quite soon that will be airing on CCTV. Gonna give that shout out right now. But yes, hello everybody. My name is Sury. I am a policy entrepreneur and queer urban designer here at the Next 100. If you can see that, shout out to alumni policy entrepreneur Zaki, who did this beautiful installation. And here's a piece of that artwork right here. Anyway, Next 100, what we're about. We work to build equitable policy spaces from the ground up. Welcome to the 4th episode of Next 100's Policy Table Talk, drum roll, where we have the honor of getting to speak with phenomenal organizers and advocates, bold thinkers and doers from across the world who are working to make this space better for us all. Next 100 is a startup think tank created for and by folks directly impacted by policy, making the next generation of policy leaders. We are here. I am queer. And we are working to build a more inclusive, equal, democratic, and just world. So today I have the absolute privilege of speaking with a good friend of mine and former colleague, advocacy and youth leadership manager, Puja Kranz-Howe, beaming in from Massachusetts, I believe. Yes, awesome. Puja is an OG organizer, and I've always been inspired by his constant dedication to centering and uplifting the voices of youth of all genders, making sure they're welcomed, making sure they're valued in decision-making spaces. Puja, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yay! I'm so excited to speak with you today, specifically about the importance of LGBTQIA plus youth in decision-making spaces and how, what we do, we'll get into it, but hiring teen civic designers can really lead to making more welcoming policy spaces. Just because we gotta, it's Pride, as you know, quick plug to Levi Bohanan's work from the Next 100 First cohort. First Pride was an uprising against police brutality led by queer women of color. And, deep gratitude for our ancestors, reverence for Marsha P. Johnson, Sylvia Rivera. And we know today that the fight really continues, right? And you were talking about that a bit while people were trickling in about how, we're seeing that happen right now with high schoolers. And, we know that it's as crucial as ever just seeing some extremely violent policies across the country that are targeting the LGBTQIA plus communities. We have what's more commonly known as the Don't Say Gay bill out of Florida, and Alabama's ban on gender affirming medical care. And we also see phenomenal organizing, particularly with youth, that are leading the way for better policy change. There's a lot to do, and you are really leading the way. So I'm excited to talk with you, and let's just jump right into it. Can you tell me a bit about your work as an advocacy and youth leadership manager? Really, what brought you to this work? What motivates you?
Yeah, of course. And like you said, I'm leading the way. I feel like I'm following the way. I'm just one of the many people. So I always start with youth leadership and especially activism as since I was a teenager, I've always been passionate about supporting young people. And I've always loved listening to their truth and especially joining conversations about injustice and racial justice and social justice and all of the isms that you can think of. And also in that, I think a lot of, especially in the past year or two, growing into my identities, being raised by white parents, thinking about being Indian, being gay, being bi, how I identified, and then also, coming out as trans. I've really been held by a lot of the youth people that I've been working with and have had that privilege of being in a safe space, coming out to a lot of the young people I work with before coming out to a lot of my family and most of my friends knew, but especially my family. So that has been an incredible journey. And I've actually been at the YWCA Cambridge since December of 2019, shout out to Counselor Denise Simmons, who started the Gold program. And then since last March, I am leading now the advocacy department and also the youth leadership departments. And with our youth leadership department, we have a program that we just launched for trans and gender nonconforming youth, which has been incredible. Hey. Wow. Also, feel free to cut me off if I'm talking for too long.
Never.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. So I've had the pleasure of starting this program with my colleague and dear friend, Georgia. And what I really loved about this program is that we were we have a space specifically for girls. And it was for non-binary folks, but it really was specifically for cis girls or people that identified with girlhood. And it really wasn't a space that centered trans youth and gender nonconforming youth, non-binary youth. And so we had a pilot program and we're let's have this program specifically center trans and GNC youth, which stands for gender nonconforming youth, and see how it goes. And they loved it. And we got 30 applicants in the first 2 weeks, which was so exciting. I was oh my God, this is exciting. But also it's really fascinating because in Massachusetts, specifically in Boston, there's so many different organizations that support LGBT youth. So I just wasn't sure, is there enough of these spaces? Are we just going to be another one? And it's obvious that that's not true. We need many more of these spaces. And it was an incredible experience. And with the pilot program, we were able to ask them, do you like this? How would you change the program? Do you want this to be a full year program? What guest speakers you want? What topics you want? And that's why we're the youth, our department is youth leadership, because it's not about, it's adult led, but it's really youth centered. And every semester we ask them, what do you all want? And then at the end of every semester, they get to lead their own sessions. So it was incredible to see that, you know, Georgia and I were talking about Indigenous rights, or talking about like the Pride movement. You know, we were talking about Stonewall, all of these things, talking about how to support trans and GNC adults and youth. And then they picked up on that and they wanted to have all these conversations as well. And so them leading sessions, they were able to like really pick what they wanted to talk about, and then we got to participate, and all the other people in the sessions got to participate. And let's be fair, like young people are so much more exciting, and they have so much to share. So it was incredible, and it was a way for everyone to be like, wait, we know the answers, like we have the knowledge, we can talk about incarceration, we can talk about the insurrection, all of these topics that we always assume that like young people, especially teenagers and middle schoolers, aren't old enough to have an opinion, to be part of these conversations. And that's just like not true at all. Oh, shout out my friend Larkin is on. Larkin was one of the first like young people who was a youth activist, and I was like, I want to be like Larkin. They've been doing youth activism work forever, since they were like, I don't know, 9.
What's good, Larkin? Thank you for joining us. That's so exciting. Oh, hey. Oh, yay. I can see the little hearts. Well, Puja, I recognize we are at 12:42. I want to respect your time. I know we had 2 more things to get through, and I'm happy to consolidate it if you'd like. I'm happy to keep going if you'd like. How do you feel?
Yeah, I'm all yours. So I don't have anything until 1. So
okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Well, great. Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing about, you know, how you came to this work. It's personal. All of this is personal. Something we say at Next 100 quite often is policy is personal. You know, this work is personal. And I think that makes you and all of us really highly qualified to do the work, right? Because we have these personal experiences that drive us. I really appreciated what you just said there about supporting the voices of young people, and that young people do have thoughts and opinions about all these things that are going on, because they're affected by them, right? And they have solutions themselves. And one of the things I had the privilege of working with you together on was last summer. We worked on the Ackerman Room project. Again, shout out Counselor Simmons for really making it possible, where we got to hire teen civic designers from across the city through the Mayor's Summer Youth Employment Program, and had them come into City Hall, look at the building, look at the Ackerman Room, named after Barbara Ackerman, the first woman mayor of Cambridge, and really tell us, like, how do they feel in this space? What do they like? What don't they like? What's confusing? What's off-putting? What's exciting, right? And I was always so thankful for how every step of the way, of even from budgeting to, you know, programming proposals, you always made sure we centered the voices of young people across all genders, gender nonconforming as well. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about your vision through that process. You know, what was your experience with that work coming into it, with the, you know, with all the work that you've had been doing then, and how it's grown now?
Yeah, I love that project for so many reasons, especially like knowing that you grew up in Cambridge and hearing your experiences. And one thing that really stood out to me was that you and I, and then our other 2 mentors who are in college, we were all leading the program. And it was one of the first times in a while, or maybe even ever, that I had been on a leadership team that was specifically like brown and Black folks. And I think that really set the tone for the conversations we were having, because looking at the history of Cambridge, which is across the country, across the world, mayors and city councilors and all of these people who normally hold positions of power are white, cis, rich men, people that hold many privileges. And so we were able to be like, hey, we're here, we're existing as ourselves, and really push back against like why we think the people that have been honored in Cambridge, but you know, this is like a national, I'm sure every city hall could go look at who they have on their wall. And so that really allowed us and the youth to really like open up and say like, these are the parts about society and about the world that we live in that we don't agree with, and these are parts of ourselves that we do love. I think especially like growing up as a person of color, and we talked a lot about this, how like in Cambridge, it's a diverse, it's like a liberal place, which it is, but there's still so much work to be done, and especially like centering young people, there's so much work to be done, and especially like centering, like, as I know you have like a tagline that you always use, but centering folks who aren't heard or who aren't really brought into the conversation. And then it was fantastic to see who everyone picked during this project. And a lot of the people that they picked were, you know, not just a community member, but like an organization like Margaret Fuller House, or people that they believed in, people that they held respect for, and people that like shared their identities as well. And we were able to really question like, what is power? What is looking at our government, like, why are those in our government seen as like the top of our society? Why are they giving all the decisions? Why are they making all decisions? And why are they the ones being, in this case, having their very expensive portraits on our wall?
Yeah, I remember one moment where we had each of the teen designers draw, and they actually put their drawings up on the actual building facade, and we compared them all. We stood back, and each of the young teen designers talked about their drawings on the actual building. Like, something about the physicality of that, you know, like touching the building's wall, moving things around, like knowing that you have the ability to shape this space, and that we need that, and that we are going to actively pay you for that knowledge and experience. I remember one teen coming up to me and asking, actually, and you as well, you know, wait, I'm going to get paid to design? I'm going to get paid to draw? Like, and to think, like, how do I do my timesheets, you know? Like, yes, all of these ways of knowing and these critiques are absolutely critical. And one thing I just do want to highlight at the start of when you began speaking, you described what some folks would call interns, but you described them as co-mentors. And
Yes.
again, like, just highlighting the language that you use and how that really brings people in and honors their experience, their knowledge, and just always appreciate that about you, Puja, and the work you do, just like down to the details and down to the budgeting, right? But yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you so much for that. I want to leave room for this final kind of opening of, you know, we are all about policy here. Well, we're all about people, and we're all about how people can change policy for the better for us all. And so wanted to ask you, as an organizer, as an advocate, as a friend, you know, what do you want policymakers to know? What do you want them maybe to do? Coming as somebody who has really dedicated your life to centering the voices of young people, particularly protecting and centering and uplifting the voices of young LGBTQ plus folks, what should policymakers know and do right now? And there's a lot, so, you know, it's
yeah,
a
we
question,
could talk about this all day.
if there are a few that just really resonate or come to top of mind today, right before you go to a panel for Pride.
Yeah, well, shout out to I can't exactly see who it is because I have my glasses. But anyway, shout out to someone who said pay young people for their expertise. So that would be my first. That would be my first plug. That's something that we've done in our youth programs, and we're really hoping to continue that in some shape or form, because the whole idea of not just policymakers, but in general, adults take young people and take their experiences and their identities and kind of like use them as show. And then when they're having the actual conversations and making the actual decisions, we're like, oh, they're too young. But then, you know, when we're talking about Pride, when we're talking about Black Lives Matter, when we're talking about like Asian women in the media, a lot of times young people will be asked to speak and share their experiences, but not hearing that other side. And looking at one thing we always talk about is how young people have been leaning, and also talking about language, you and I always say young people instead of youth or like teenage. Like I really like to say young people because they are people who are like younger than me, but they're, they're people. So thinking about with the murder of George Floyd as one example, we were talking about Stonewall, the first Pride, these were all led by young people. And so the spaces that we're creating is really just like fostering that. Like I really try and go into my sessions as like just providing space for them to speak and question the world they live in, but knowing that I'm not telling them how to do this. They all have the answers and I'm learning so much from all of them. So I think that those are the two biggest pieces that really come to mind is, and there's so many people, activists, young people out there that are already doing this work. So policymakers really just need to listen to them and fund their work. And know that I like to think back to like, for a lot of people in Congress and in the Senate when they were teens and when their parents or adults in their life were like, this is a radical idea. Like what you're thinking is unreasonable, like universal health care or I don't know, whatever the issue is, like that's crazy. 4-day work weeks are crazy and all of these things. And like our society is so centered on capitalism. And I've just been in shock about how much money of our government goes to the military. It's like 70, it's crazy. It's like 700,000. It's ridiculous. And I know that so many young people would have so many answers about where that money should go. And there's so many young people also that it's just that idea that until you're 18 or until you're 35 or whatever the age is, you don't have an opinion and you don't have like advice to give. And that's just like really, not true. And then in relation to Pride Month, I think it's really important, especially within the LGBT community, there's so much racism, there's so much transphobia, there's so much ableism, there's so much classism that we really need to undo. I have work to do, we all have work to do, and we really need to like specifically like if we are always centering Black trans women, the world will always be a better place. And they have been leading so many movements and are currently leading so many movements. So I don't know, that's just like a brief what policymakers can do. But I think it's so important that we aren't just like saying we're listening to young people, but we're actually like involving them in the changes that we're making.
Yeah, absolutely. Paying them for that knowledge, especially when, disproportionately LGBTQ plus young people of color are really, really poorly affected by a lot of the policy decisions, right, that we're seeing, that can result in a lot of financial difficulty.
Yeah, it's so true. And just like with trans healthcare specifically, this whole idea that like surgery for trans folks is just for trans folks. Like I saw this meme the other day and it was like cis is like people when your sex identifies or aligned with your gender that you are assigned at birth. And so this idea that like only trans people have surgeries for their gender, and that's everyone has surgeries kind of that can align with their gender, and that can also be like cis folks as well. So just there's so much to learn, and also this idea that it's like that being trans is just like a new phase, or that it's like a new I don't know, like it's the next just that it's like what people are doing now, like what our generation is like obsessed with, like being trans, and this idea of having binary genders, only having women and men, is just not true. It's part of Western culture. There's so many indigenous cultures across the world that have a variety of different genders, and so it's so fascinating to learn about those too. Yeah, well, thank you for having me. I feel
Puja, it's been wonderful. I'm just gonna keep smiling at you for like the next 10 minutes, but we can do that off of Instagram Live, IG Live. thank you so much for being here. This means the world, especially making time right before your panel. Yes, thank you so much. Also wanted to give a plug. We will be putting this on our YouTube page. So if you missed a part of it or just want to replay and listen to us nerd out and get really close to the screen like grandmas, you know, it'll be up there for you. Thank you all for joining us. Puja, thank you especially. I am so excited for the work you're doing, and I'm excited to continue to build this together.
Check out Next Generation too. I'm so excited to follow the work you all are doing.
I will see you soon. And good luck with the panel. Happy Pride, everybody.